So let's look at meditation 4. It's always good as you move through the different meditations to take a good look at what he says, especially at the beginning, because he does take some time to review where he is, to give us a sense of where he is in his argument. And since this is at least written as a kind of a drama, now whether Descartes ever actually undertook this project of radical doubt, or at least in the way that he is describing it, having proceeded over a number of days in an isolated house somewhere, you imagine him sort of sitting in the dark by the fire with his wax and so forth, who knows, but he does give you a sense of where we are, where he is, beginning of meditation 4, which is called Of Truth and Error. He gives a kind of an inventory of the things that he has discovered so far. Of course, he knows with absolute certitude that he exists. He also knows with, I would imagine, the same level of certitude, whether that's true or not, but he seems to indicate it, that what sort of thing he is, a thinking thing. And he knows a third thing now, having established it in part 3, or meditation 3, that God exists. We can dispute every one of these apparent things that he knows. He's convinced of them. We don't have to be. We should look at his reasons for claiming that these are absolute or absolutely certain truths. We don't necessarily have to agree, but we should, we're following along here. So how do you put these three things together? He knows of his own existence, and he is sure of the kind of existence he has as a thinking thing, so that he is having experiences. And as long as he regards them merely as subjective, or one might say internal experiences, then those experiences are undoubtable. What's doubtable, what's really at issue here right now, is whether he knows anything beyond himself, or whether he should regard all of his experiences, all of his mental experiences, as entirely private and as essentially experiences of his thinking substance. I would guess really the goal of meditations from this point is really to try to establish grounds for something like our common sense view of the world. That is, that I am an experiencing subject. I perceive, I have sensations, I have all sorts of thoughts that seem to relate to an everyday world around me. He has no philosophical basis for those claims now. He continually refers to his old habits, his customs, his impulses to believe something like that. I think that the philosophers call this animal faith, that we simply have faith that our ideas, our sensations proceed from a world that is substantive and independent of us. But that animal faith has no philosophical, rational foundation yet. So we put these three things together: his own existence, his existence as a thinking thing, and the existence of God. He seems to think that will get us somewhere. And at the bottom of page 133, at the beginning of Meditation 4, I think he gives you a pretty good indication. He says there, "And now I seem to discover a path that will conduct us from the contemplation of the true God, in whom are contained all the treasures of science and wisdom, to the knowledge of the other things in the universe." These other things being the things that he has not established have any existence. Now, how is he going to do that? How does the existence of God help him, so to speak? What function does God have? What role does God play within the meditations themselves? Well, you see that much of the meditation is taken up then with the question of, well, since we have a perfect God, and he is working really with the same notion of God, that basic notion that Anselm and Aquinas were, that God is an all-powerful, all-knowing, perfect being, and that really was the basis of Descartes' proof in Meditation 3. Take a look at that he has this idea that there cannot be more reality in the effect than there is in the cause. So if Descartes has an idea of a perfect being, then that idea cannot come from anything less than perfect. And he certainly sees imperfections in himself, so he infers that that idea must have proceeded from something greater than himself, and this he calls God. So the question then becomes, well, I have established that there is this perfect being, and moreover, that my being as an imperfect being, as an imperfect substance, depends upon that perfect being, and was created by that perfect being. Now, how could it be then that this perfect being would create a creature such as myself, who is imperfect, who is deceived, who falls into error? Descartes seems to struggle with this throughout Meditation 4, because on the one hand, that doesn't make any sense. He assumes, I think, in Meditation 4 that God, if he is a perfect being, cannot be a deceiver. That is, the notion that a perfect being would engage in a kind of a fraud or deception, that is, create a being who was constantly mistaken about the truth, would make no sense. It would be absurd. On the other hand, it's clear that we do make mistakes, that we are all the time mistaken, make errors. It's really the basis of the meditations itself. So I think what he's struggling with here is, well, I was created by God, so I should trust in my abilities. And those include my cognitive abilities, my abilities to know. Yet, at the same time, I know that I err. So how can I put these two things together? A perfect God who would not deceive me, and the obvious truth that I do err, that is, that I am sometimes deceived. I think what you want to keep in mind is that he's trying to get to a point where he feels comfortable in trusting his fundamental animal faith, that is, that he is not the only thing in the universe besides God, that his sensations and perceptions really are sensations and perceptions of an outside world. He's trying to get to that point, and I think he is struggling with it. I don't know if he really resolves the difficulty, that is, that we have a perfect God who would not deceive, yet we are sometimes deceived. And you'll see that at various points he'll say, well, I can't hope to understand God's intentions entirely. And moreover, I don't understand, if there are other things in the universe besides me, how I fit into that greater whole, and whether or not my own imperfections may, in the larger view of things, in the largest view of things, not be imperfections at all. I think that where he gets by the end of Meditation 4 is, well, he refers back again to the absolutely crucial criterion of clarity and distinctness, or clarity and distinction, as a criterion for when I actually know something as opposed to when I merely have a belief. He says that, where does error come in? Error comes in when my will, and look at that, when my will runs ahead of my understanding. He says that his will, he has two things in him, in his mind, his will and his understanding. And the understanding is limited and weak and imperfect most of the time. But the will seems to be simpler and stronger. When he makes a judgment on the basis of evidence which is not clear and distinct, he says that's when my will, when I judge, when I actually affirm or deny something with my will, that's when I get into trouble, because I do so on the basis of incomplete, insufficient, or fuzzy evidence. That's the source of error. So what we get at the end of Meditation 4 seems to be a view that, well, I was made by a perfect God. I am myself not perfect, but my basic equipment, as long as I use it properly, should serve me well in what I want to do, which is basically find out what I really know and to find out things about the world. So